This one's going to be a little bit different. This one is going to be basically, look, I'd love to give you 58 videos or how many ever is. It's like 58 or 57 players who played for the Mariners. I'd love to give you an individual one on each one. But there's a few guys who only appeared in like 10 games or less. And I'm just going to combine all of these guys into one video. And I'm going to try to remember anything about some of these guys because quite a few of them no longer in the organization. But I thought it would be fun to do it this way. We'll go from one game down to 10 is what I will set the limit at. And actually it's going to be 9 now that I'm looking at it. The 9 gamer club or fewer, or 9 games or less, I guess is the correct way to say that. But before we get into it, let's thank the good people of Simply Seattle for sponsoring the show. Simply Seattle simply has the very best in Seattle sports gear. Mariners, Seahawks, Kraken, Sonics, Huskies. Huskies finally at the 4 spot, which they deserved a long time ago. And actually, I think they should be 3, but whatever. Cougars, Apple Cup should be a lot of fun. Sounders, Storm, all sorts of great stuff. Hats, hoodies. You can find it all at Simply Seattle. Use code MOLLYWOP15 to save 15% off your order. That's MOLLYWHOP15. I'd really appreciate if you guys use that code if you do, because, it shows that you're paying attention. And I would really appreciate that. And Simply Seattle deserves your business as well. www.simplyseattle.com, link in the description. All right. So first up on this list, Jose Rodriguez. Absolutely not. Zero memory of Jose Rodriguez playing for the Mariners. I remember when I first started this project, I looked at Jose Rodriguez and I thought I was just going to do a video where I just ended it by going who after 12 seconds of silence. Kind of regret not doing that now. Zero memory whatsoever of Jose Rodriguez. Ryder Ryan, a little bit of a memory of him. I believe he pitched in a fairly low leverage situation, but pitched pretty well. A guy who was not a top prospect, but was an intriguing prospect at one point. It's kind of bounced around. Minor league free agent. Would be surprised if Seattle brought him back as organizational depth. Not a big loss. Can't say he was a huge contributor to the Seattle Mariners. Here's the one of the one gamers who was intrigued. Let me skip him, actually, and let me go to JB Bukauskas. JB Bukauskas' one game, unfortunately, was a high leverage situation where the Mariners were out of relievers, and it did not go very well. He was one of the better college pitching prospects of his draft, the same year that Evan White got drafted. There was some talk of Seattle perhaps selecting him. Really good stuff, horrific command, and the stuff's gone backwards. Command hasn't gotten better. So, JB Bukauskas, best of luck to you. He's only 26. He can still figure some stuff out. The one guy on here that is in the one gamer club that I definitely remember is Easton McGee. I was shocked when I saw Easton McGee on the mound against the Blue Jays that day. But 6 2/3 innings of shutout baseball, taking a no-hitter as deep as he did. Man, what a heck of a start. He was worth a half a game of WAR. I alluded to this, that he was worth a lot more WAR than a lot of guys who appeared in many more games than he did. Like, that was really impressive. And Easton McGee is a guy that I think they liked quite a bit. He was putting up good numbers in Tacoma prior to that. ERA right around 3.2 or something along those lines. I wish I had the number up, but I have to have all these damn players who played for the Seattle Mariners for just a handful of games. Unfortunately, does undergo the surgery. Mariners basically tell him to go elsewhere. And that happens a lot with guys who are, not likely to contribute the next year. Minor league free agent. Imagine there'll be some interest. I wouldn't be shocked if Seattle brought him back on a minor league deal, hoping that, he rehabs and maybe competes for some sort of pitching position in 2025. But of the one gamers, that's definitely the one that's the most impactful. Good for you, man. Devin Sweet. He was an intriguing-ish prospect, but a reliever that never was going to be a high leverage guy. Made 2 appearances. Can't tell you when they were. I think he ended up pitching for the Angels at the end of the year. I don't remember a whole heck of a lot about that. I know he ended up playing for another major league team and facing the Mariners for another major league team. I'm bothered. I'm going to hit the pause button and see who. I was kind of close. It was the Athletics. I knew it was an AL West team, and he did face off against the Mariners in a relief appearance, but not nothing. Not a big loss. I wish him luck, but not a guy who's ever going to be a high leverage reliever. Tommy Milone, who I think some Mariner fans were clamoring for, maybe the wrong word, but kind of hoping he would make some starts over some of the guys who were starting for them at the end of the year. Made a couple starts, got really fortunate and won against, I believe, the Giants. Again, we're just trying to go off memory. I shouldn't have even looked that up for the Devin Sweet thing. That was cheating now that I think about it. And one other one that didn't go so well. Or if it did, it's Tommy Milone. The fact the Mariners had to have Tommy Milone starting games for them last year is pretty rough. Pretty rough. So now we're in the two gamers, like I said, Devin Sweet, Tommy Milone. Prelander Berroa, I still think he has a chance to be a really, 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 really good reliever. The Mariners clearly did not trust him because he only made those two appearances. That one appearance, I think he walked the bases loaded. Then he makes another appearance in a meaningless game towards the end of the year, basically meaningless. That stuff is sick. It would not shock me at all if by the end of 2024, Prelander Berroa is a high leverage reliever. I kind of wish the Mariners would have given him more chances over at least one guy that we'll mention on this list, maybe a couple. I don't know. We're just going down the list and finding out. Darren McCon, or as I like to call him, Don McCon, just because I'm an idiot and it just flows together. Just the definition of a AAA fodder guy. Nothing more, nothing less. Just organizational fodder that you have in Tacoma or whoever your AAA team is. That's all he is. That's all he is. That's all there ever will be. And that's okay. Means you're not going to get paid a whole lot of money. But Don McCon, we thank you for your 3 contributions. Emerson Hancock ends up making 3 starts for the Mariners. I personally wasn't terribly impressed with those 3 starts. The numbers were okay. Looked like he had kind of cemented a role in the rotation at the very end of the year before the injury. All reports are he'll be ready for spring training. I don't think he's competing for a starting spot. I wouldn't be shocked if Emerson Hancock is traded this winter. Sure, you want to have depth. I totally get that. You want to have depth. Then the Mariners got hammered by not having starting pitching depth last year. But I think Hancock and the fact that you do have, talked about Robbie Ray last night. We talked about Marco Gonzalez. We talked about, or haven't talked about it, but there are some other arms in the organization that I think you have enough depth that if a team is interested in Hancock in a trade, it wouldn't be a big deal for me to move him at all. Long term, I think back end starter. Still curious to see how that stuff looks in relief, like max effort. But long term, I think he can be a serviceable, if unspectacular, starting pitcher. Luke Weaver. Oh, do I remember Luke Weaver? Had one really nice relief appearance. Ended up making that one start. Went so well that I think he was designated for assignment the next day. May have had, even if he would have pitched well, maybe he does because they just needed the roster room, but no. Not great. Not great. Luis Torrens, Mariner legend. Wouldn't be shocked if he came back on a minor league deal, gets a chance to battle for the backup catching spot if the Mariners can't bring Tom Murphy back. Can hit lefties. Terrible defensive player. More of a guy that I would like on a 28-man roster than a 26. But, Thanks for the memories, Luis, and maybe we'll make some more. Speaking of third catchers, Brian O'Keefe. So now those last few, Weaver and Torrens made 5 appearances. Hancock and McComb made 3 appearances. Now we're all the way up to 8. Brian O'Keefe has done a really nice job in Tacoma. What I remember most about Brian O'Keefe is him starting the game after the Mariners clinched the playoff spot in 2022 and him getting his first hit, sitting next to my buddy Jordan from Suspetta's Family Barbecue. I'm sure they'll bring him back as that AAA backstop. And maybe you see him see time in the majors, and maybe you even see him compete for the backup spot, but kind of doubt it. It's worth pointing out, by the way, that Brian O'Keefe, even though he hasn't played much, is already 29 years old. So he got 8 appearances. Matt Festa. Actually, there's a few. We're getting into the reliever portion now. Matt Festa was a guy I think, I wouldn't say he got a raw deal, but kind of in between that. Matt Festa was really good for the Mariners in 2022. And he didn't show great command. That's an understatement. But he pitched pretty well in Tacoma. I was surprised that they didn't turn to him a little earlier. I still think Matt Festa can be a really nice reliever. Now, he's 30. Again, some of these guys that you think are young aren't. They're just not. They just don't have a lot of experience. But I still think Matt Festa can be a pretty decent reliever. Diego Castillo. You forgot about Diego Castillo, didn't you? I kind of did too. Diego Castillo was a huge part of their bullpen in 2022 and just stunk to high heaven last year. Stunk to high heaven. I'm going to be really curious to see what the market for Diego Castillo looks like. I mean, when he was on, he looked like a legitimate high leverage reliever. But there were just so many moments of just awfulness. He was Fernando Rodney-esque without the saves for the most part. You know, he did get some save opportunities in 2021 and 2022. Certainly didn't get me last year. I'm going to take a quick break to get a drink, but I'm also going to look up Diego Castillo's numbers. Yeah, I was just checking to see if my memory served me right. And yeah, 2021, Diego Castillo in his 24 games with them, 2.86 ERA, couple of saves, 26-7 strikeout to walk ratio. Very solid. 2022, 3.64. Not great. And again, reliever ERA, a flawed stat to say the least. 53 strikeouts and 54 and a thirds innings, 22 walks. Solid. But they only gave him 8 chances in 2023, and they were not good. He walked 7 guys in 8 and 2/3 innings, 6.23 ERA, 7 strikeouts, not horrible. It's like he just, and they didn't give him another shot after April 23rd. Yeah, I'll be curious if another team gives him a chance. I think Diego Castillo's size will be held against him as well. He's listed at 268 pounds. You know, I'm much bigger than that, and I'm not fat shaming anybody ever. But baseball teams do hold that type of stuff against people. There's exceptions. El Guapo pitched in the major leagues for a very long time. You know, it happens. But I do wonder what that market will look like. 110 made 9 appearances. I was surprised by that. I couldn't think of 1 or 2. Minor league free agent now at the age of 23. I think he'll see a lot of interest. Hopefully from Seattle. I'd like to bring him back. I still think he's a nice arm. Not a closer. Certainly not a starting pitcher at this stage in his career. But I wouldn't be surprised if he had some interest. Because of the age. 23 years old. Easily the youngest player that we've talked about so far. Hancock's 24, so he's only a year older. But the youngest anyway. Oh, and Prelander's 23. So just ignore everything I say. How is this a 15-minute video? Let's close this up. Dominic Leone. It still frustrates me how often he was being used and the situations he was being used. Ugh. And Eduard Bazardo. I saw some flashes there. I'm not counting on him as a high leverage guy, but I saw some flashes there. I saw some flashes that suggest he can be a decent little reliever. Still on the 40-man roster, so they'll give him a shot. So yeah, let's do one more. Nah, I have enough to say about Ty Adcock that I can do his own video. Anyway, those are the guys who didn't play very much. Thank you for watching. Please hit like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Any of those guys that you have like a strong memory of other than Easton McGee, or even if you do have a strong memory of Easton McGee, that's great. But yeah, those are the guys. They played for the Mariners. I have visual proof.